The galaxy was never quiet. Space was always filled with noise, radio signals, messages, trade calls, engine hums, and chatter from thousands of alien worlds. But one morning, everything changed. At the edge of the galaxy, near the outer dark, a strange ship appeared. It was shaped like a black arrowhead, smooth and silent. It came from no known planet, and it carried no flags or symbols. It did not ask for permission. It simply drifted forward, slow and calm, like it belonged there. Its name blinked softly on all nearby sensors, HSS Never Alone. No species had ever heard of such a ship. No one knew who made it, or how it had crossed the black barrier that surrounded the galaxy's edge. Some thought it was a myth, others believed it was a ghost. But then came the message. It didn't come in one language, it came in all of them. Every species, every ship, every station heard the same calm voice. In their own words, "This is Captain Elian Ward of the human ship Never Alone. We come in peace, but we are not alone." And then, silence. No one knew what to say. No one had ever heard of humans. They weren't listed on any star charts. They weren't part of the Galactic Council. Not a single explorer had found their homeworld. But somehow, they had found the galaxy. The Council's main channel filled with questions. Who were these humans? What did they mean by not alone? The top leaders of the 12 great species met in private, speaking in urgent tones. One scientist from the Yelene species, who studied space-time folds, said the ship came through a dead zone where no signal had ever returned. The Drelly diplomats, who prided themselves on knowing every active race, said no records mentioned Earth or humans or any system called Sol. Yet here they were, with a ship larger than most battlecruisers, running on energy no one could identify. More unsettling than its size was its presence. Wherever the Never Alone passed, machines slowed down, not broken, just still, as if the ship whispered to them in a language they half remembered. Some defense systems even powered off without warning. Yet the ship made no threats. It did not scan, hack, or flash its lights. It just moved slowly, politely, across sectors as if waiting for someone to say hello. But no one did. The galaxy had seen invasions before, brutal wars, surprise attacks, ancient weapons from forgotten empires. But this felt different. There was no violence here, just silence, calm, waiting. On one trading moon, a crowd of aliens gathered to watch the ship pass overhead. Children pointed and laughed nervously. Elders whispered old legends. A merchant tried to sell human souvenirs before realizing no one knew what humans looked like. On the mining belt of Sector 12, machines stopped drilling when the ship came near. The workers stood still, staring up through space domes, unsure if they should hide or bow. Across the galaxy, the same thing happened. Nothing. No sound. No attack. Just stillness. That's what made it scary. The Council decided to open a channel. They sent a message, translated into hundreds of languages. State your purpose. Identify your origin. For hours, nothing came. Then, a simple reply, "We are looking for a friend, the one you call Lost Species X." That message changed everything. Species X was a mystery, even to the oldest civilizations. Long ago, traces of a species were found across several planets. Old stone patterns, ruins, tiny devices that hummed when touched. They had vanished without warning, leaving behind strange gifts and impossible knowledge. No one knew who they were or why they left. They were called the Lost Ones or Species X. Some thought they were myths. Others believed they had ascended beyond physical form. But now the humans were saying they were searching for them, not by accident, but on purpose. And they knew the name used only by the Council's inner circle. The Council was shaken. Who were these humans? How could a race not even listed in the galactic archives know the name of Species X? And why were they coming now? Some said it was a lie, a trick. Maybe the ship was built by old enemies trying to scare the galaxy. But others weren't so sure. The voice from the human ship had sounded calm, not like a warrior, more like a guide. A few curious minds in the council wanted to know more. They requested access to the ship's records. The humans replied, "All answers will come in time. We will speak again." And then, as before, the galaxy went silent. Every species turned, their eyes to the dark sky, where the Never Alone drifted slowly through the stars, leaving no trail, making no sound. A single human battleship had appeared, and nothing felt the same again. High above a swirling gas giant, the Galactic Council met inside a floating city made of silver towers and glowing blue bridges. The air shimmered with energy as 12 leaders from the most advanced civilizations gathered around a round table made of crystal stone. They had not met in such secrecy for over 100 years, but the arrival of the unknown ship, the HSS Never Alone, had changed everything. No one spoke at first. Some looked out through the tall windows into the stars, as if trying to see the human ship with their own eyes. Others stared at their data pads, re-watching the message from Captain Elian Ward over and over. "We are looking for a friend, the one you call Lost Species X." Those words had shaken the entire galaxy. The name Species X was not public knowledge. It had been hidden from most records, protected by the oldest civilizations, studied only in whispers. How could these humans, who appeared from nowhere with no known history, know about it? Finally, Chancellor Doro from the Yellin species spoke. Her voice was quiet but firm. "This ship came from the Black Zone. No signal has ever passed through it. No ship has ever returned. We believed it was a dead region of space. Now a human vessel has arrived from it, larger than any warship we've built, and it disables technology simply by being nearby." A ripple of concern passed through the room. High Envoy Trin, leader of the insect-like Drevon, tapped the table with his longclaw. "Its systems are not aggressive, yet our defense satellites shut down. Our scout drones lost contact as soon as they approached. The ship is not attacking, but it has complete control over our space. And still, it makes no threats." Ambassador Zilari of the Orvani, a peaceful water-dwelling species, leaned forward. "I have studied the message again and again." The human captain was calm. Her voice was not proud. It was hopeful. "I believe they truly are looking for something or someone." General Vrax of the iron-skinned Karani slammed his metal fist on the table. "Hopeful or not, this is a strategic threat. One ship with power beyond anything we understand. That is not something we can ignore." A cold silence followed. No one had an answer. Even the best scientists could not explain how the ship moved without fuel, or how its surface shifted slightly when viewed from different angles. It seemed to be alive, or at least part living, and the name Never Alone raised more questions. Were there others? Were humans only the beginning? The Council's chief historian, a soft-spoken being made of light named Vale, brought up a new point. If these humans found us by following clues left by Species X, we must ask ourselves, how did they find those clues when we, with all our power and age, could not? The leaders exchanged nervous glances. It was a troubling question. If humans had solved the mystery of Species X, what else did they know? Had they made contact? Were they carrying knowledge far beyond what the Council had discovered? Grand Speaker Elinai of the Feathered Ayari spoke next. "I reviewed the energy. Scan results. This human ship does not match any engine type we know. The core appears to be both matter and not matter, and the way it bends light, it's as if the ship is only partially in our space." The Council was not just worried. They were stunned. Every new detail about the ship made less sense, and still the ship did not change course. It floated through the stars, slowly and peacefully, without answering any more messages. Many believed it was testing the galaxy, waiting to see what the Council would do. Some members suggested sending a fleet to surround it, not to attack, but to monitor. Others warned this could be seen as hostile. One ambassador suggested opening the ancient archives to see if any old warnings had mentioned a ship like this. Another argued that if the humans were truly peaceful, they should be welcomed and studied. As the meeting went on, whispers of fear turned to curiosity, and then to something else, wonder. Could it be that these humans were not enemies, but something new, something the galaxy needed? Perhaps they held answers not only about Species X, but about the future itself. But before any decision could be made, another message came through. Every comm screen, every station, every channel suddenly flickered. The human ship had sent a new broadcast. This time it was not just a voice, it was a map. Glowing symbols floated in space above each screen, showing ancient star paths long erased from modern navigation. The paths led to abandoned systems, dead moons and uncharted zones, all places where remnants of Species X had once been found. Then a series of images followed: a stone door in the desert of a forgotten planet, a silver sphere buried under ice, strange music recorded in deep caverns. Each of these had once confused scientists, each one left unsolved. But now the humans were showing they had studied them, understood them, and followed them here. Then Elian Ward's voice returned. "We are the last to join this galaxy, but we are not the last to search. We come with questions, and we come with memories passed on to us, not from stars, but from dreams, from voices that guided our kind across the dark. We ask for peace, and we ask for your help." The message ended. No demands, no warnings, just an invitation to understand. In the council chamber, the mood shifted again. Even General Vrax, always ready for battle, sat in quiet thought. Something about the human words felt true. The galaxy had never met humans before, yet it felt like they had always been part of the story, waiting just beyond the edge. Now they were here, and the council had to decide what came next. Were the humans a new force to fear, or a missing piece of the ancient puzzle? As stars twinkled outside, and the Never Alone continued its slow, silent journey, the galaxy held its breath. The council had many questions, but they all knew one thing for sure. This was not the end of something. It was the beginning. Every screen across the galaxy flickered as Captain Elian Ward of the human ship Never Alone appeared once again, this time not just in voice, but in full view. Her image was steady, her uniform simple and without medals, her eyes calm but filled with something deeper, something like quiet purpose. Behind her stood a wall made of smooth silver and light, softly pulsing in a pattern that seemed alive. No one in the galaxy had ever seen a human before, but now every species watched in silence as she spoke. "We are not here to conquer, nor to test your strength. We come to share what we found, and to ask what you have learned." She raised a small device, no larger than a hand, and it projected ancient symbols into the air. Symbols many recognized but had never fully understood. "This language belongs to the ones you call Species X," Elian said, "but to us they were something more. They were the beginning." Across the galaxy, scholars, explorers, scientists, and even common people leaned closer to their screens. These symbols had been found carved on forgotten planets, hidden beneath collapsed cities, or etched deep into mountain caves. They had puzzled even the wisest minds. Now the human captain claimed to understand them. Elian continued, her voice steady. "Our journey began when one of these symbols appeared. Not in space, but in the mind of a child on Earth. A human child. She drew it over and over, not knowing its meaning. Then others began to see it, in dreams, in visions, in the quiet moments before sleep. We did not know where it came from, but we listened. The galaxy listened too, frozen in curiosity. We followed these signs across our star system. We dug into forgotten craters and old ice layers. We found objects, not made by us, machines that responded to touch, lights that pulsed in rhythm with our thoughts, sounds that spoke without language. The deeper we searched, the clearer it became. Someone had visited our world long before we rose from the ground. They left behind pieces, not to guide us with power, but to guide us with wonder. As she spoke, her ship projected images, a round chamber glowing beneath the Earth's surface, a floating orb that moved without wind, symbols that shimmered like water, and an audio tone that made every listener feel both calm and alert. Elian said quietly, "We came to understand that these were not machines of control. They were tools of memory. Species X had not just vanished. They had stepped back, choosing not to rule, but to inspire." The leaders of the Galactic Council, watching from their high chamber above the gas giant, said nothing. Some of them felt chills, though their species had no skin. Others felt warmth, though they lived in cold. The message reached beyond reason. It touched something older, something deeper. Elian continued, "We followed the trail left by these memories. They led us through dark space, beyond the edge of what you call safe. Our journey was long, we lost ships, we faced silence, but the clues grew stronger. A whisper here, a light that flickered for 1 second on a dead moon. Then we found it. The projection changed. Now they showed what looked like a seed floating in space. It was small, glowing gently, and wrapped in threads of light. It was waiting, she said. Not on a planet, not inside a sun, just drifting in darkness. It opened when we came near. It spoke not with words but with thoughts. It was old, older than stars. It was not Species X itself, but something they had made. A gift. It called itself a guide. The galaxy, used to cold machines and logic, found itself facing something it could not explain. This guide taught us not how to build weapons, but how to shape peace, Elian said. It showed us how to grow a ship, not just build it. The Never Alone is not just metal. It is memory. It remembers places Species X once visited. It listens to the echoes of stars. It sees what was hidden, not by force, but by patience. Then came the part that truly shocked the galaxy. We did not build this ship alone, Elian said. It built itself through us, with knowledge we only partly understood. We followed, we learned, we gave trust. In return, it gave us understanding. The council leaders sat stunned. No empire had ever claimed such a thing. Not the Varn Dominion with their Star Eaters, not the Zentari Alliance with their mind webs, not even the ancient Ilari with their crystal moons. This was different, quiet, gentle, powerful in a way that did not threaten, yet could not be denied. We believe Species X never left, Elian said. They stepped back so that others might rise. Not all species listened. Many rushed forward with fire and war, but some heard the quiet voice beneath the stars. She looked straight into the camera. You all search for Species X like one might search for treasure, but maybe they were never lost. Maybe they were only waiting to be heard. Her message ended, but the silence that followed was louder than anything. Across every world, beings turned to one another with wide eyes, with uncertain words, with hearts stirred in ways they didn't understand. On distant research stations, old puzzles were reopened. On desert worlds, ancient carvings were studied again. On starships, captains wondered not how to fight the human ship, but how to understand it. The council called an emergency session. Some demanded truth, some demanded proof, others simply asked, "What if she is right?" And still the Never Alone drifted, slow and steady, offering no weapons, showing no shields, saying only, "We are not alone." The galaxy was used to strength, to conquest, to force, but now it faced something new, knowledge passed not through power, but through trust. If what Elian Ward said was true, then the greatest secret in the galaxy had never been hidden. It had only been waiting for someone to listen. And now that humanity had arrived, everything was beginning to change. Deep in the empty part of space where stars were few and the darkness felt endless, the human ship Never Alone came to a stop above. A quiet, dead planet with no name, its surface covered in smooth black rock and old silent winds. Captain Elian Ward stood on the bridge of her ship, watching the shadows on the planet below through a wide glass window that wrapped around the control deck. Her crew, calm and focused, said little, because they all felt it too. Something was down there, waiting. The ship's sensors had picked up nothing unusual, no life, no movement, not even heat. But the guide inside the ship, the strange living core that held memories of Species X, had stirred for the first time since the last message to the galaxy. It had spoken a single word in the minds of the humans aboard: home. No one understood what that meant, but they trusted the guide, just as they had trusted the visions, the clues, the whispers that led them across the stars. With quiet readiness, a landing team was prepared, and soon a small shuttle dropped from the belly of the ship and drifted down toward the strange world. As it landed, the dust beneath it curled up like fog, yet there was no air, no wind. The crew stepped out in sealed suits, their boots sinking slightly into the soft stone. Ahead of them stood something impossible, an archway, 10 times taller than a human, made of glowing metal that did not reflect light, but seemed to drink it in. It stood alone in the middle of the desert, no other structures nearby, no ruins, no signs of a city or home. Yet the arch was perfect, untouched by time, and humming with energy so old and deep that the ground itself seemed to listen. Elian stepped closer, her team silent behind her, and as she reached out to touch the arch, it pulsed once with a low sound that felt more like a thought than a tone. Suddenly, the arch changed. Not its shape, but its appearance. Lights raced across its surface, showing symbols, then pictures, then faces, faces of beings that looked nothing like any known species. Tall and smooth-skinned, with long arms and eyes that shone like stars, they looked peaceful, wise and very, very old. "These are the builders," said the guide inside Elian's mind. "The first ones to listen, the ones who stepped back." At once, the landing crew felt a wave of emotion, sadness, hope, memory, and something more, something like forgiveness. The images continued, showing the builders creating great cities not for themselves but for others, shaping tools that helped growing civilizations, leaving behind knowledge hidden in the cracks of space and time. They never ruled, never claimed, never demanded. They were teachers without names, giving without asking. They had been watching for ages, from far beyond what most species could see. And then, without war, without sound, they had vanished, hiding themselves in places no one dared to search, until now. The arch began to speak, its symbols forming words, and the humans listened. It told the story of the builders, now called the Hidden Ones, how they had seen the rise of many species, helped from afar, and waited for one who would not seek power, but truth. The message said, "You have followed not the loudest call, but the quietest. You have reached the place where we once stood. Now you may see." The ground opened slowly, revealing a staircase that spiraled downward into the dark. The humans entered, their lights shining ahead, their steps echoing off walls that seemed to breathe. As they moved deeper, they saw carvings that moved when viewed from different angles, stories written in pictures and sound. They passed through halls that shifted around them, not as a trick, but as if the place itself was learning who they were. Then they reached a chamber so wide it felt like a sky with floating stones circling gently in the air, each one glowing softly. At the center of the chamber stood a column of light, and within it a single figure, a builder, not alive, not dead, but preserved in a way no one could explain. The guide spoke again. "This is the first, the one who planted the seeds of memory. He sleeps, but his story lives." Elian stepped closer, and her suit shimmered. Her mind filled with images, not of war, not of glory, but of sharing, of building, of handing down pieces of a greater whole to others. The builders had seen what power did to empires. They had watched great fleets rise and fall. They had chosen not to fight, but to disappear, so that their knowledge might be found only by those who looked without pride. The chamber around them pulsed slowly, as if breathing with the past. Then a soft beam reached out from the light column and touched a badge on Elian's chest. It changed, glowing softly, reshaped into a new symbol, one the builders had used in the old days, a symbol for hope carried forward. The message was clear. The humans had been chosen not for strength, not for numbers, but for their journey, for listening, for following not the loudest call, but the quietest. Outside, the galaxy waited in silence, watching from afar. Many had doubts, fears, questions, but now, aboard the Never Alone, a quiet truth had been found. The builders were real, the legends were true, and they had never truly left. They had only hidden, waiting for someone to listen, not with weapons, but with wonder. As the landing team returned to the surface and the shuttle rose back toward the ship, Elian looked out the window at the lonely black world below. It was no longer empty. It was no longer dead. It was the key, the starting point, the place where the silent builders had left their story for someone to find, and now the story was waking up. The ship, Never Alone, rose from the silent black planet, carrying with it the truth of the builders, the gift of memory, and a new symbol glowing on Captain Elian Ward's chest. The mark of hope passed forward. But even as the human ship reached orbit once more, the strange guide at its heart stirred again, softly humming with new energy, and sent a message into the minds of all those aboard. The path is not yet complete. A final step remains. You must be tested not in strength, but in spirit. No one spoke aloud, yet each crew member felt it, a shift, a pull, as if space itself had leaned closer. The stars beyond the bridge window twisted, not spinning, but bending, forming a doorway of light that had not been there before. It pulsed like a heartbeat, inviting them, daring them. Elian stood still for a long moment, her eyes fixed on the strange glow, then gave a simple nod. "Take us through," she said, and the ship moved slowly into the light. At once, the stars disappeared. The galaxy vanished. No planets, no systems, no maps. Worked here. The Never Alone floated in something deeper than space, a place without distance or time, yet still very real. The crew could not see where they were, but they could feel something watching. Not a person, not a creature, but the echo of the builders, old and quiet. The guide spoke again. Each voice must be heard, each heart must be shown. This is the test. Suddenly the ship's lights dimmed, and a soft mist filled the air, curling through the halls like breath. Each crew member found themselves alone, separated not by walls, but by something unseen. In the silence, each was faced with a memory, not one from their own life, but one from the past of a stranger. Lieutenant Mara saw a world burning, not from war, but from hunger. She saw beings begging for help, but none came. The vision ended with a child alone in the ruins, staring at the stars. The guide whispered, What would you give to stop this? Mara felt her hands shake, but answered in her thoughts, everything. The mist around her faded. Technician. Larroux stood on a bridge made of light, watching two worlds on opposite sides, one rich, one poor. Ships flew past without stopping. He felt the weight of choice, to send supplies one way or the other, but not to both. The guide asked, "Who will you save?" Larroux's voice was firm. "Whoever needs it more, even if they have nothing to give back." The light around him faded. One by one, the crew faced tests not of battle but of soul, truths, regrets, sacrifice. And in the center of the ship, Elian found herself no longer aboard, but standing in a white space filled with stars that shimmered like falling snow. There stood a single figure, not a builder, not human, but something between. It had no face, only light. "Captain," it said, "you carry the mark, but do you carry the meaning?" Elian felt no fear. "We came not for power. We followed the questions." The figure raised a hand, and suddenly Elian saw Earth from above, not as it was now, but as it had been, noisy, broken, wild. Then she saw it healing. Rivers cleaned, forests regrown, people helping each other across borders. "This world began in fire, yet reached for peace," the voice said. "Do you believe others can do the same?" Elian nodded. "If they're given the chance to choose." The figure looked at her for a long moment, then spoke one last time. "Then this is your gift and your burden." With that, the stars returned, the white space vanished, and she stood once more on her bridge. Around her, the crew slowly reappeared, tired, quiet, but changed. The mist faded. The strange light outside the ship slowly folded back into space, and once again the galaxy was before them. But the ship had changed too. Its skin shimmered with soft colors, and along its hull were new symbols glowing faintly, messages in the builder's language, messages that said, "They have been tested, they have been found worthy." Across the galaxy, watchers who had followed the human ship's journey felt the shift. On council worlds, leaders paused their speeches. On battle stations, weapons were lowered. On quiet planets, old stories were told again, of the hidden builders, of trials, of the ones who would one day return. Now the galaxy knew that time had come, yet not through war, not through force, through something much harder, understanding. Captain Elian looked at her crew, each one holding a part of the test in their heart. She knew they had passed, not because they were perfect, but because they had chosen to listen, to care, to hope. The guide's voice returned once more, softer than ever before. "The door is open now. The next choice is not ours, but yours." The ship turned gently toward the stars once more, not as a weapon, not as a warning, but as a reminder that sometimes the greatest strength is in the quietest voice, and that real tests are not of battle but of heart. And somewhere, far beyond sight, the builders watched with calm eyes and smiled. The Never Alone moved quietly through space, its engines silent, its lights soft, and its crew thoughtful after the strange test they had just passed. And though no alarms rang and no enemies chased them, the feeling inside the ship was not peace, but something deeper, a sense that something had begun, something larger than any of them could fully understand. And as they floated through the stars once more, the guide inside the ship pulsed with warmth, not speaking, not pushing, just watching. And for the first time the crew understood why the ship had been named what it was, because now they truly felt it. They were not alone, not just with each other, but with something ancient, something kind, something that had waited across time for someone to listen. And now, as messages from across the galaxy began to reach them, messages from alien worlds, from once proud empires, from small colonies, and distant stations, asking, not demanding, wondering, not threatening. The crew realized the silence that had once spread across the stars when they first arrived was not from fear alone. It was from awe, from hope, from a question held on every tongue. Who were the humans, and why had the builders chosen them? And what would they do next? And so Captain Elian Ward stood once more on the bridge, her hands behind her back, her eyes on the stars, and she read the messages one by one, some filled with curiosity, others with warnings, some even with offers of alliance or trade, and yet none of them truly understood what the humans had been given. Because the true gift of the builders was not a weapon, not knowledge, but a voice that could reach across species, across fear, across pain, and speak, not with control, but with meaning. And Elian turned to her crew, every face familiar, every person now marked by what they had seen and felt, and she asked a simple question: "Are we ready to speak back?" And the room stayed quiet, not because they didn't know, but because they did, and one by one they nodded. And so the message was prepared, not a command, not a boast, but a call, a beacon that would reach every edge of the galaxy, written in clear, simple words. We do not come to lead nor to rule. We come to share, to listen, and to learn. We were given a voice, and we choose to use it with care. The builders are not gone. Their story lives in all of us. You are not alone. And when the message was sent, nothing happened at first, just silence again, deep and wide. But then the stars seemed to shimmer differently, as if the space between things had grown smaller, and far-off ships began to change course, not to attack, but to meet, to talk, to try. And planets once closed began to open their skies, and ancient enemies paused their wars, unsure but hopeful, and across the bridge of Never Alone. Something changed as well, for now the ship itself responded, not in words, but in form, its hull blooming with new shapes, new colors, as if the builder's design was no longer hidden but revealed. And from within its heart, the guide stirred and whispered to Elian, "The journey begins now." And the captain understood, for what they had done so far was only the first step, the lighting of a flame in the dark. And now came the hard part: building trust, sharing truth, walking among those who still carried fear, still remembered wars, still doubted peace, but now had seen something different, something rare, something they thought impossible. A ship that stood not for power, but for connection, and a crew that passed a test not with weapons, but with kindness. And so the Never Alone set its course toward the nearest world that had sent a reply, a quiet planet near a dying sun, where refugees had gathered from 1,000 shattered homes, and as they arrived, no weapons fired. No guards stood ready, only people looking up with unsure eyes. And Elian stepped down the ramp first, alone at first, but never truly alone, for her crew stood behind her, and above them the ship glowed with the builder's light. And as she raised her hand, not in warning but in welcome, the silence broke at last, not with fear, not with shouts, but with a single voice from the crowd, asking, "Will you help us?" And Elian answered, "Yes, if you'll help us too." And with that, the future began, not with fire, but with hope, not with a weapon, but with a promise. And the galaxy, once so full of noise and war, began to change, slowly, carefully, and every world that heard the message knew, deep down, that something new had started, something that might fail, might fall, but was worth trying because they too had begun to feel it, that quiet truth, that message behind every signal and every "Silence! We are never alone!"